Okay. Okay, we're good to go. We're all right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're last meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So as Brian's report, on that closed session matter, we have a recommended motion coming out of the discussions. And the motion is to approve the addition of a revenue clerk position to the finance team effective immediately in 2026 and to be included in the 2027 budget. Is there a mover and seconder for the motion? Moved by Councilor Ferguson, seconded by Councilor Studer. All in favor of the motion? And all opposed? And that carries. Thanks very much, everyone, and thank you again, staff. So that just leaves the confirmatory bylaw, and motion reads that bylaw 26-055. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings, the council of the corporation of the municipality of Mississippi Mills at its regular meeting held on the 11th day of August 2026. Be read, passed, signed, and sealed, conducted council of the 11th day of August 2026. Mover and seconder, please. Councilor Lowe, thank you, and Councilor Torrance. All in favor? Thank you. And adjournment, that we are adjourned at 6:58. Thanks very much, everyone. Yes. You got it.
Good evening. Before we actually get started, I'd just like to, make an apology and explanation. Part of the reason I have never done this job before is because I always sound like I have a terrible cold. To the point where people feel sympathetic. Well, I'm not sick, but I do have, some respiratory chronic conditions that mean I take medication that make me sound like this. And it's never going to get any better. So, I apologize if it's too grating. If I have to leave the chair to take the medication, I'm just going to point at the deputy mayor and he's going to segue into that decision seamlessly. So it will just be a nod, okay? Call for the first item is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. So if anyone has a pecuniary interest to declare, you can do it now or at the time. Item 3, consent items. There are 3. The first is the approval of this agenda. The second, the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was way back in June 23rd. And the third is a follow-up report, funding analysis for operations coordinator and public works coordinator positions, which we requested in June. And that report is in your agenda package. If anyone would like any of those pulled for further discussion? Seeing none. All right, could I have a motion to approve the consent items? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Holmes. All in favor? Thank you. No consultant reports. Staff reports. We have a couple of staff reports with motions. On the first one, this is going to be Kathy Davis' show. Kathy is our Director of Corporate Services. It's on reserves and reserve funds policy review. If you can just please for Mr. Davis to enter. There will be 2 motions. The first is a general motion regarding money, and the second is a policy motion on this. Ready?
I think I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. My report tonight is a follow-up from February. So yes, it has been a while. There was a bit of analysis and some digging that I wanted to do to be able to provide council with a little bit more detail about our reserves. So just thought I would do this quick little recap to frame where we are. So you'll recall the KPMG long-term financial plan came with a number of recommendations. One of them was about our reserve and reserve funds policy. We spoke about this in February, and council asked for a little bit more information. This is a trajectory of all of the work that council has done about reserves over the past few years. So we've had a number of conversations, lots of decision-making, lots of updating, and a fair degree of change. When we came to February report, there were 4 proposed recommendations in that report. 2 were approved and 2 were deferred. So the two that were approved were, one was just administrative, merging a couple of reserves into one account. And then one was to incorporate recommendations related to life cycle asset management into the 2027 budget. So I haven't prepared to speak to that again. That was all in the report in February. What I wanted to speak to today were the two outstanding recommendations. So you'll recall the recommendation from KPMG was that council consider a stabilization reserve with a 10% of capital and operating budget balance. We currently maintain a $1.1 million stabilization reserve, which is about 3.2% of that budget. So not quite at the same level. And then the other recommendation was about approving some changes to the policy. So from my recollection from that meeting, most of the changes in that policy, council had discussed and were okay, but we were still waiting to see what level we wanted to have that stabilization reserve sit at so that we could update the policy to reflect council's decision with respect to that. So the information that council had asked for, this was the investigation that we've undertaken in the last couple of months, was a bit more history about what has happened in our reserve accounts over the last little while. What other reserves do we currently have in addition to stabilization? Are there some operational budget factors? Have we used stabilization reserves in the operating budget, for example, over the last little while? And what is the difference between having a 5% or a 10% or a different number stabilization reserve, and what does that do to our finances?
Excuse me. Before we get into this in great detail, I'd just like to ask the people around the council chamber and Mrs. Davis, would you prefer to have questions following the entire presentation? Or if people have questions about a given slide, would you receive those? What would people prefer to do? Councilor Lowe.
It's a pretty big report. I think maybe ask at the end of every couple of slides, slide or every couple of slides.
That suits you. All right.
Do a little pause at the end of the slide and see if there are questions. So just for context, we went back to 2022 to give 4 years of history for council. Part of that was because the records that we have from 2022 on are a little bit easier to interpret. Going back further than that, there's a lot of leaking, and I wasn't sure how much value there was in that. So what we did find in looking at that 4 years of activity, and you do have a pretty, I'm sorry, I printed out so small, a spreadsheet in the report that gives it a little bit more detail. We tried to separate the reserves out into different types. We have, as you know, many, many different reserve accounts, but they serve different purposes. So when we were looking at tax supported reserves, so that would be for things such as roads, fire, administration, council, those kinds of things. We did see an increase in that reserve balance over the last 4 years of 18%. Then when we looked at rate supported reserves, so that would be water and sewer, waste, police levy, building department, those kinds of things that are funded through their own revenues, basically, there was a decrease. I don't think it's anything to be alarmed about in either case. I think it is part of the natural ebb and flow of how we spend. So in water and sewer, we had some very big projects over the last little while. We had built up reserves, we were able to spend them. That's the natural flow of how those funds work. And then I labeled them other reserves because we do have 2 accounts that are treated a little bit differently. The economic development and the industrial development reserves are funded often from sale of property, so land in the business park or other properties. So the revenues we can see in the last few years, we've had a little bit of money go into reserves there. So then on the right-hand side, just to show usage, we broke it down by the different reserve types. Is it a stabilization reserve? Is it for special projects? or is it for capital asset life cycle? And you can see the different spending for tax supported versus rate supported versus other on average. And maybe I'll stop there because that is a heavy slide. There's a lot of information there, but it just shows a little bit of the activity that's going on in the reserve. Thanks for the
Councilor Holm?
Kathy, there was an increase in the tax supported and a decrease in the rates. Do you have any recommendations about for a minimum level that should be retained in those reserves?
So on the rate supported side in the water and sewer, for example, which is the bulk of that reserve, the water wastewater rate study actually depicts that for us out into the future. So that is a really good example of how we have been able to plan for, our rates are here, they steadily increase each year to be able to cover off all the costs, even though from year to year it fluctuates.
So, are you saying that we're still in line with the rate supported? Like it's following the recommendations?
So far, yes, we're only a year or two in, but yeah.
And that's something you'll be reporting on, you're on that yearly basis that you talked about. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you. Kathy, you had stated right now we're at 3.2 for stabilization and the opportunity of 5 or 10. And we said with implications. At 3.2 and knowing what we're faced with now, do you think we should increase beyond 3.2?
I think from what I've seen, 3.2 is a little bit below where we would be comfortable. Honestly, in the research that I was doing, 10% did seem to be like a, best practice guideline, kind of, the chances that you would need that much in a stabilization reserve are, I think, considering, looking at the history for the last few years anyway, not something that I would be too worried about in the immediate future. I do think the falling in between there somewhere is probably a happier.
Councilor Holm?
Sorry. So with our financial status at the present time, we would be comfortable with 5, so 3.2 and not 10. Good, thank you.
Councilor Holm?
That was basically my question. It's my other part of it is, why wouldn't we start at 5% and review every year or two? And if it's not keeping up with the recommendation, then we have to increase it. Just a thought. Thanks.
Councilor Starnes?
Well, without guessing what the next slide is, Kathy, whether you're going to give us a little bit more information or not. In your report, you also stated the conventional average is 4%, and so where we are, I think it would be more reasonable to be 4 or 5%, and rather than 10, and to be able to see whether that works or not. I see that when we have our current stabilization reserve balance, it means you're doing a good job in your budgeting. Because we don't have to use that. That's a good thing. It's because you're thorough and your staff are thorough and all of our staff are very thorough in their budget projections. So it means that we're not having to dip into that stabilization reserve. If we have it, it's there. But I don't think that we need to go to that 10%. We haven't seen crazy fluctuations over the study period. And I think we're well run. So it allows us to say, we're confident in having a provincial average of 4% or even 5%, if it makes us a little bit more comfortable. But we don't have to go to that larger amount when, people can use that money in their own pockets just as much as we can benefit from the interest that we would gain on it, but it doesn't need to be in our pockets.
Thank you. Councilor Lowe?
Thank you. Director, just a quick question. The 3.2% of Ontario municipalities was of their revenue. And we're talking about of our expenses. Now, I know we're supposed to balance our budget, so it's the same, but is there a reason that's different?
The only difference is that the way the MFOA captured their data was based on revenue, the way the recommendation came from KPMG was based on capital and operating, but yeah, should be close.
Ready to go to the next slide?
This is a chart from your report. It's just another way of looking at the flow of information. I believe this may be where I have an error. We did find one addition error in the report, which I will point out. But this is showing the 4 years worth, what was contributed to reserves. So overall, there was 11 million across all of our different reserve types that was contributed. And then you can see that it's spent. It's a bit of a judgment call on some of the expenses that were in my analysis. Is this a stabilization expense? I tried to use that for things that were unexpected and unforeseen. There was 1 year where council had budgeted some money to come out of reserves to help keep the tax rate stable, and then we didn't need it. So there's different ways that we've been using stabilization without necessarily calling it stabilization. So from what I could pick out of the analysis, there was about 1.3 that we used. General projects 2.3, and then life cycle costing is the big dollar value 7.5. That relates all back to the asset management plan and the recommendation of Watson around how we fund that. So the closing balance across all of our reserves, probably close to what it was at the beginning.
It almost looks like an accountant did it.
So the last piece I tried to break, I know this is a lot of analysis, this is what happens when you ask accountants to get more information. So this was just another way of looking at how we have our reserve balances distributed across the different reserve types. I think one question that did arise in our last meeting and came to mind often while I was doing this exercise is why we have so many accounts. Not a conversation for today, I don't think, but it really did come to light that, when we're talking about tax supported services, we have many different accounts for those, but it's all coming from the same place. So, we can lump them together a little bit. But this was just another way to look at the year-end balances for 2025. I know this slide looks short, but I did go back 10 years into our operating budget to try to see exactly that. I think the question was, how often have we needed to use this? There was 1 year that we paid a loan, a large piece of the loan off, but other than that, the average was, as you can see, quite low. Not to Councillor Torrance's point, not something that we're dipping into millions of dollars on a regular basis. So that's just a really high level summary of what that analysis showed, but there was not a lot of activity.
Just so I'm clear, the average was 120,000 per year from the stabilization, but were we taken from other accounts maybe that we should have been using stabilization?
Very good question. Yes. We haven't touched the stabilization reserve. So that general capital reserve tends to be where surpluses go. And it is also what we have generally used for approving special projects or cost overruns and those kinds of things. So I think, as we become more sophisticated in how we want to show this to the public and demonstrate to council, we can use that stabilization, just be more transparent about what's stabilization and using that reserve.
So just out of interest, you were saying like our year-end surplus, how much on average as a percentage of our budget, is surplus every year?
So I'm going to give you an example, if that's okay, because I did look at 2025. I know we've had this conversation multiple times about what is the surplus, and when the auditor comes and speaks to you, the surplus that she provides is not our cash flow surplus. It involves, you know, capitalization and amortization and those kinds of things. So I looked at 2025 as an example. This is not audited numbers yet, but the amount that was transferred as an operating surplus was 634,000. But then when I did some further analysis, the capital spending from operating, we spent 685,000 less than we budgeted. So is there actually a surplus when that money is really accounted for capital projects that just didn't get completed in that year? So I think we would see a little bit of that fluctuation back and forth. Looking back in prior years, it would be anywhere between that $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 amount, but a lot of that is accounted for in capital projects that are yet to occur.
I would like to ask, in connection with that, when you had those surpluses, did that money go back into the general reserve? And so it did not go into our stabilization, because there's a difference in the purpose between stabilization and general reserve. And I think we should make that clear, that the stabilization reserves are usually funded by unexpected savings. And they are used for unexpected cost overruns or disasters or projects that must be done that weren't budgeted. Like there are real emergencies, whereas the other pot is the pot that we seem to have been using, which is the general reserves.
If I just might add one additional use of the stabilization, it can be used in a year if we have, for example, inflation like we had during COVID, and we look at what that's going to do to the tax rate and say, we don't want to do that in 1 year. We want to stabilize this tax rate increase, and we use the stabilization reserve to smooth that out.
Thank you very much. I don't like the word general in reserve because it's too broad. It covers, capital, covers stabilization, it covers, operations. So I'd love to see, and that's part of this work, right? What you said about, money left over that is for projects in the future. Why isn't that in prepaid expenses at the end of the year instead of? Because it's, if it's sitting as, you know, left over and this is our sort of net income, it's really not, because we've already committed that money.
I think there may be a better way to show it. We haven't actually handed the money over yet, so it wouldn't be.
Sorry, not prepaid, accrued liabilities.
Sorry.
Better accrued liabilities.
I think there may be a better way. Let me
Yeah.
put some thought into that if I could, and maybe benchmark a couple of other municipalities and see how they treat it. It's almost an encumbrance, right? Like we've committed the funds.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's, we have the money, but we need to pay it out. It's not a profit. So I guess that's my general comment, and I know that's what, I mean, the work you've done in this over the last 3 years, when I remember going back to our first budget and being so lost when I looked at the reserves, trying to figure out what everything was to where we are now, which isn't final, but it's certainly huge, gigantic leaps forward. So I appreciate it. I think my general comment is, I don't like the word general, so let's be as specific as we can. And let's, you know, even stabilization, like in our policy, we have to be really clear about what stabilization funds can and can't be used.
Mayor Lowry.
Thanks, Madam Chair. But I absolutely echo Councilor Lowe's comments. Like, we're a long ways from where we had been, and I think, you know, for us, let alone the public, this is much easier to understand, and having, you know, benchmarks and goals is going to help future councils be able to make decisions and know where it sits among our obligations and whatnot. My one comment is a little bit of a weedy one, and I can't help it, but the year-end surplus, that's not really what we're talking about today. but that is such a thing. And, you know, every year around this table, we get stuck on it. And I don't know if there is any examples the CTO has, or AMO has, or any of the other organizations out there. If somebody has, examples of how they, you know, attribute those dollars that haven't been spent, that they have been allocated somewhere. It's a real weedy comment for me to make, but it just seems like something we get stuck on all the time. And if there was another way of being able to differentiate, to be honest, it has surprised the auditors some do a little bit of it better than they do. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about tonight, but I couldn't let the opportunity pass to say that is something I'd love to be able to solve. The smallest of issues compared to everything that we're working through here. But it does seem to be something we trip on, and I think it gives the sense to the public too that, wow, we're off by, you know, $700,000 where it really is, well, we just haven't got to $650,000 of the projects yet because of timing or whatever the case may be. So I will leave it there. I think two of us have spoken to it pretty passionately, so.
One final comment from
Yeah, thanks. Just that I don't think this is weedy at all. I think this is where the final, where I'd love to get to, right? Is at the end of the day, this is where we sit at the end of the year, and it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to sum up?
I would like to make one quick comment, and I do have a couple more slides. In the policy revisions, I have added a year-end reserves report, so I'll take all of this feedback and see what we can benchmark and what we can find that would help give you that specificity. I think I'm just jumping into the analysis that we've talked about a little bit already. 5% versus 10% versus 2.3. This was all in the report, but I'm just putting in a little different format. Again, really council's decision around what you're feeling comfortable with. I do think that 10% is a best practice benchmark that, yeah, maybe we do work towards it, but these are the different scenarios. So if we were to have a 5% balance, then we would transfer 1.3 million. If we left it where it was, and I apologize, I said 3.2, 2.3. We don't need to do anything. This question did just come up quickly a moment ago about how the stabilization reserve would be funded, and came from councilor earlier. So these are the funding sources. There may be others, but this was what we could come up with. So true surplus, if there is, budgeted stabilization reserve contributions in years where we can afford to do it. Specific revenue sources such as interest earned on reserve funds, one-time recoveries or revenues, and then transfers from the, we'll come up with another name, capital reserve. So those are just some of the funding sources that that could be used. But I think, you know, if council sets a target and we make this transfer, we'll probably be in good shape for all that.
All right, if we turn to page 42, well, at least I would turn to 42 of my package. There's an awful lot of pages here of tables, graphs. However, when we come down to the actual recommendations, and the first recommendation, there'd be A, B, and C. Option one. I'm a little lost here. Give me a chance. I know that there has been a repeat. It's on my pages 14 of 94. Recommendation that the committee of the whole recommend council direct staff to transfer $3,709,000 $832 from general capital reserves to operating and capital stabilization reserves. And that the committee of the whole recommend council direct staff to merge the two fire department reserves into one account. We are beyond,
Mary Lou,
this is further. Yeah.
you're just reading the wrong motion. That's from the February report.
Can you give me the page it's on?
If you go to page 17,
7. Okay,
On the screen too.
all right. But there was one that I saw that had option 1, 2, or 3. And then.
that was the February report.
No.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Is there a different? Oh, you're gonna read, sorry, apologies.
Okay, can we
Page
start?
21 of our report has the
Office A through E.
Honey, dude, I've got everything but. I've got everything but. I remember this. Okay, here we go. And the recommended motion that the committee of the whole recommend council direct staff to transfer $3,709,832 from general capital reserves to operating and capital stabilization reserves. Option A is that we do not increase the amount in the operating and capital stabilization reserves and reject the motion. Option B, increase the operating and capital stabilization reserve to 5% of annual expenditures and approve a transfer of $1,304,916 from general capital reserves. Or option C, increase the operating and capital stabilization reserve to 10% of annual capital expenditures and approve a transfer of $3,709,832 from the general capital reserves. All right, could I have a motion from someone to choose to discuss either option A, B, or C? Councillor Ferguson,
Yes, thank you. I make a motion that we select option B.
okay.
I'll second that motion.
Deputy Mayor Manelli has seconded it. Discussion. Councillor Lewis.
I'm just kind of curious, if we go to 10%, you're recommending that we transfer 3,700,000, but if we do B at 5%, it's 1,300,000. Can you just, I must have missed something, can you explain that to me, please?
Yes. Option, you can see here, there's a little chart right above this, which shows that if we were to go with option B, about 5% reserve balance, it would be 2.4 million. So we would only have to transfer the 1.3.
Thank you.
Councillor Torrance.
I would actually tend towards option A myself. I think that the amounts that we have in it currently has served us well for the last 5 years. We've not 120,000 is generally what we take from it. And we have a good balance of a budget already in the stabilization fund. I don't know that we actually need to increase it. If the wish of council is to increase it, I would certainly favor option B over option C.
Any further comment? Okay, the motion on the floor is to accept option B. And it has been seconded. Councillor Lowe.
Sorry, I do have one, just to make sure. This is simply a paperwork question. There's no money changing. It's already in reserve. It's just going to.
Correct.
Okay. Could I call this motion? All in favor? Carried. Next motion. The next motion. That the committee of the whole recommend council approve the reserves and reserve funds policy and Schedule A as amended. This policy did come before us last February, and there have been some minor changes. Mr. Davis, would you like to comment on this?
Most of the changes were clarification, and just a little bit more detail on, the purpose of the different reserves. I think the one bigger change will be changing the stabilization target, so that we can match what council position is today.
All right, the changes were included in your package. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none. Could I have a mover for this? Councillor Holmes, seconded by Councillor Torrance. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Councillor Torrance.
Just clarification, we suggested option E with 5%, correct? That is what we've just done.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, so works agree. I wasn't sure that was what was on the floor, but I heard that was what was on the floor. So 5%. Option is,
Yes, as amended,
okay.
but it's amended as.
Option A.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
So item 5.2. Again, this is a report from Mrs. Davis, tangible capital asset records.
We do not have a presentation for this report. I think it is relatively self-explanatory. So the Public Works Department is working with PSD citywide to implement a tangible capital asset module. The Public Works Department holds the majority of the municipal's assets, which will be entered into the system, all road segments, all the pipes, all the assets that they manage that are tracked financially as well. So when we put out the RFP for our new resource planning system, finance system, we did ask for tangible capital assets to be included. We, as the Public Works team and the finance team, had demonstrations of both systems. We all agree that the PSD citywide system is just much more robust when it comes to tracking capital assets, tracking financials. It automatically calculates depreciation. It creates your asset return and obligations. It creates the ministry report for current replacement values. So there's just a lot of joint work that both teams have to work on that could be in one system as opposed to trying to maintain them in two. The opportunity has come up as the Public Works Department works through their implementation to kind of put the financial pieces in alongside. But there was additional cost to that hadn't been contemplated in the Public Works budget, hadn't been contemplated in our budget. So we thought we would bring this to council just to see if that's something that we were interested in approving mid-year. I understand, again, this is a request outside of budget. So I've given a couple of options for council. One would be approving the 27,600 to come from reserves in 2026 so that we can move along with the project along with Public Works. Alternatively, we could wait for the 2027 budget and present the project at that time and then work on the implementation during 2027. There are pros and cons to both. I think there are some synergies to be found in doing it alongside Public Works and having all of that research and reconciliation done at the same time. But it could certainly be done after the fact. We could continue with our manual process for our 2026 year end and then bring this back to council for 2027 budget.
Councillor Holmes?
Thank you. We're sure now that this piece of software, the one that the public is going to work with the software, the financials that you're putting in.
They are two different systems. The interface will have to be data import and export, so they won't directly speak to each other.
So, but they're both capable of having that. So that's been researched and we had the cost of that.
The
Interface.
the interface. So from what I understand from both parties, would be a data export, which is not costly. It creates a spreadsheet that brings everything out of Citywide that we would put into Sylogist. I don't expect there will be costs on the Sylogist side to upload this information either. Deputy Treasurer Shambaugh has used the PSD Citywide software before, said speaks very highly of it as far as managing tangible capital assets, reporting, and the ability to move that information. So, yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Mayor Lowry?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge I'm really pleased that we're moving instruction and moving slowly, and it takes time. I don't say that as a criticism whatsoever. It's small teams in every department, and doing work in a different way takes time. It takes time to get it right. Nonetheless, I've seen some examples from implementation of the local work side that's already been so helpful in being able to, understand what's happening, what's going on and whatnot. And I think Councilor Holmes is exactly what we're talking about in this application, but our ability to understand how work is happening, the flow and moving away from spreadsheets. How archaic, right? To use spreadsheets. But I'm really pleased, and I know it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort to switch, especially when small teams, but I think we're moving in the right direction to be doing this.
Councillor Torrance?
I think that it makes sense to do it now, Kathy. I think you're, Director Davis, that when you say that municipal staff maintain 24/7 spreadsheets, to be able, if as a team, as a combined team, an integrated team, you're going to do it all at the same time. You'll be able to problem solve with each other and be able to learn from each other as you go along. $27,000 is not that much, and in the long run, to be able to complete the work when it makes sense to complete the work. So I would be in favor of spending the money now, and because it makes sense from a human resources point of view.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, there are two options up on the screen. Option A, to approve the use of reserves to facilitate a 2026 transition to implement tangible capital asset financial records in the VSD citywide. And option B, not to approve the use of reserves and direct staff to include this item in the 2027 staff draft budget for future consideration. Could I have a choice from someone? Thank you. Councillor Lowe, and then Deputy Mayor Manel.
Thanks. I would move option A, to go ahead and do it now because I feel like this is kind of the last piece of work that we did. And I'd like to have it done before the next round of, budgeting, which won't happen until January, so February.
And I'll second the motion because I.
It was, I suspect I know the result of this vote, but we do have to vote. So, all in favor of option A? Karen? And thank you. And safe drive home. And if you would please ask, Mr. Williams to come in. The next item is a discussion that's a carryover from a previous discussion about a strategic coordinator position, full-time for the fire department. Chief Williams, do you have a slideshow for us?
Yes, I do.
All right. I'll turn it over to you.
So this presentation just provides a brief overview of the recommendation to make the strategic coordinator position full-time permanent role within protective services. This position was approved as a one full-time contract position in 2026 budget, and with direction it was to be brought back to council prior to 2027 budget. Purpose tonight is just to highlight some of the reasons why we think the permanent status is recommended based on the continuity workload, the regional training center growth, and the compliance requirements required. The recommendation is that the committee will recommend council approve the position as a full-time permanent position on a go-forward basis. The funding model would remain the same, unchanged, with 50% funded through the regional training center and the additional 50% of the position through the tax levy. This is not a request to change the funding split. It's a request to provide stability and continuity to the role that is already supporting key municipal and department priorities. So I'm still not looking to change the 50% split. The current contract status creates a risk of a turnover, particularly as permanent opportunities become available elsewhere. If this position became vacant, the department would face disruptions, recruitment and training time, and loss of local program knowledge. Making this position permanent supports retention, continuity of service, consistent ownership of long-term initiatives in the municipality and the fire department. This is especially important because the role supports more than one function. Includes the emergency management, the training center, public education, compliance, grant support, and strategic planning through the organization. For compliance and emergency management workload, it's a significant part of this role. It's tied to recurring legislation and regulatory responsibilities. These include the firefighter mandatory certification, the community risk assessment requirements under the Fire Protection Act for public education and inspections, and just all their emergency management obligations. These are not one-time projects. They require ongoing coordination, documentation, training, yearly exercises, reporting, and follow-up. For example, the emergency management exercise and customized the IMS 300 for 19 members of our municipality staff, part of the emergency control group. They put through 5 different training sessions of the 19 staff. With between that, our yearly exercise that's coming up in September, plus our monthly meetings, we've put it to about 235 hours the one individual has put in just creating for the emergency management so far this year. So it's a significant amount of work that goes into the emergency management, where a lot of potentially council here and a lot of public don't understand the inner workings of it all and what's all involved with it. The key point is that compliance and emergency preparedness require year-round ownership, not just short-term project support. The regional training center continues to grow as a regional training hub. Revenue was increased from $81,000 in 2023 to a projected of $200,000 in 2027. With the course offerings increasing from 8 courses a year to 26 courses a year. And our projected student participation is reaching 387 students putting through our training center in 2027. In 2026, we're putting 300 students through our training center in 2026. The growth requires more than just the course management. It requires promoting the training center, relationship building with regional departments, coordination with Ontario Fire College, our certification and testing bodies, instructor coordination, quality insurance, and ongoing engagement to identify training needs within our area. Dedicated strategic coordination helps protect and expand this revenue stream while supporting municipal investments in training infrastructure. For public education and prevention, that's another part of this position. This position also supports public education, community risk reduction. Public engagement has increased significantly, with Facebook reach and growing from 54,000 people in 2025 to 188,000 in 2026 year to date. So we are getting out in social media, we are being recognized. Video and reels increasing from 184,000 seconds. I guess it's all based on how long people are watching your videos. So yeah, in 2025, went from 184,000 to over 1 million seconds viewed. So we are getting people, not more people watching the videos and our content, but they're actually watching the whole content. So it's not just flipping through, which a lot of the stuff it's beyond me, but it's impressive. This demonstrates that the residents are engaging in our fire safety messaging, dedicated coordination, support the constant year-round education. This also helped increase our prevention capacity. For inspection, our fire inspections have increased by 20% in the first half of 2026 compared to the first half of 2025. So by as the public education responsibility has shifted away from the fire inspector. So our fire inspector still participates in public education stuff, but the setting up, organizing, planning, that's gone to the strategic coordinator, and we've had a 20% increase in our fire inspections in the first half of the year. In closing, option 1 is our recommended option, approve the strategic coordinator at full-time permanent position. This provides continuity, improves retention, protects regional training center revenues, supports compliance, and allows fire administrative assistant position to remain focused on core administrative functions. The report note that making this position permanent does not add additional burden to the tax levy under the proposed funding model. It also supports revenue growth, cost savings, and operational efficiency, including the projected $40,000 increase in RTC revenue in 2026 over 2025. And it also helps avoid consulting costs of approximately $10,000 for community risk assessment that needs to be redone. The strategic coordinating role supports safe and sustainable service delivery, modern municipal operations, and sustainable financial stewardship. For those reasons, staff recommend the council approve the position of full-time person. Going forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Torrance and then Deputy Mayor Mel. The mayor.
Well, I think that I'm one of those ones that contributed to your million seconds. Because I watch it more than once, you know, and I think that that's, you know, I really have been enjoying the content that's been coming out and as have lots of residents. I think that it has really, it's really done the job of education. I think it's a great step. I am 100% in favor of the position and I'm making it permanent now. I just start there. It is the funding of the position. And can you please remind me, Chief Williams, when we said yes in the beginning, didn't we say we were going to go, it was going to at some point be fully funded by the regional training center? And it's where the money's coming from that I'm looking at, not whether the job is necessary or whether it's effective or anything like that. I think it is. And I'm supportive of it. It's just where the money's coming from. And I thought we had the business case in the first place about what the regional training center and how it was going to fund 50% of this position. But I might have a faulty memory, but I seem to remember it was going to be increasing so that it was at some point it would be 100%. So I just, that's what I'm putting out there for somebody to either debate or agree or.
Can you answer that?
Yes, so it was brought forward in October when this position was first brought forward to see if eventually more funding can be drawn from the training center to cover that position. At that time, we stated that it was not that it's direction we were planning on going. We were sticking at the 50% because the plan is a third of the position to do regional training center work, and the other 2/3 of the position would be doing municipal work through public education and emergency management. And the intent wasn't to full fund this position 100%.
Mayor Loud. He was pointing at you.
Thank you for advocating.
Yeah, you're right.
Thanks, Manager. I do remember that conversation as well. And I remember it being exactly that, like there's a lot of municipal work that this position is required of the position. So I do remember the conversation and I remember the answer that you gave us tonight, what we talked about then. I mean, maybe we'll get to a point where we will need a 100% focus on the training center because things, you know, grow so exponentially. I mean, that's a possibility. Let's, you know, shoot for the moon, land in the stars. I just wanted to say that it's not surprising that there is so much uptake on the public ed side, you know, the engagement on socials and whatnot. The feedback that I'm getting now that there is more promotion of what's going on, you know, in the backyard, people have no idea. You know, they had no idea, and I think a lot of our community is very proud that there's a facility of the caliber that's there. The distance people are coming to use it, like it's like this best kept secret almost. So I'm really glad that there is more promotion of it happening. And I fully support the recommendation, but I also just wanted to say, like, I think we would be taking a step backward if we went with option 2 is what we had in place, right? And, you know, that would be a really big step backwards for us. And something I wanted to share when this was on tonight was Minister Dunlop, the emergency preparedness minister, has continued to have tabletop exercises at the annual conference and at the Rome conference for the last couple of years. And it really strikes me because in the invitation, it says no emergency management planning experience required. And now, you know, kind of think about what does that mean? Well, it means like anybody could go, who doesn't have the opportunity to be working with our CMC and learn what it's about. What I have found out from those who participate is there's so many municipalities, there's nobody who really has this figured out. And one of the things in addition to the training center, I'm really proud of is that there are many people in our organization who have become trained up and will know how to participate in an effective way if there's issues, when there's issues. And that's taken some time, and that's taken a lot of coordination, a lot of work on the part of the whole team over there. But it really needs to, we really need to recognize the dedication of the coordinator over there. So I really hope more municipalities do take up that opportunity to work with the minister on a tabletop, and they take it home and realize what they need to do to be as prepared as possible. And I'm just really grateful that we are as prepared as we can be, and we're always working on bettering things. We can always get better. But yeah, I'm fully in support of what's here and really pleased with the wins that have happened just in the last 6 or 8 months.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Well, I am in support also. I'm just wondering, is this a request for position to be funded immediately, or is this a request to go into the 2026 budget? There's 27.
The funding's already been approved for 2026. I don't think it would change from contract position to a current position in within 2026.
Would be any increase in money. The other question I have, just out of interest, you do talk about, it's a phenomenal growth, but do you have the actual revenue number for 24, 25? I don't see them here, it says in 23, it's projected to 200,000 in 27. It would just be very interesting to know, because it is a lot of growth. Thank you.
I don't have the figures with me at this time.
I thought on your slide that 2025 was 81,000.
Yes.
So 2025 number is there. 2026 was 81 plus 40, wasn't it? 121, and then 2027 you're expecting was 200.
Yeah.
If memory calls me, 2024 wasn't, I don't think we were offering nearly as many courses, so nowhere near the 81, but 81, 121 with a projection for 200,000. So.
Good news story.
Councillor Lowe.
I'm really sorry. I'm going to put a bit of a damper on it, and I hate to do it, Director, because I understand everything everybody is saying. I really do. The position of inspector is fairly new. Do you, within my time here anyway, do you know like what percentage of inspections? No, I'm gonna backtrack. When that position was formed, what percentage was to be inspections and what percentage was to be public education? Because now we're moving that off of that person, so if it's increasing the number of inspections that they can do we actually need them to do that number of inspections? Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, so with the way our municipality runs, we're request complaints for inspections, except for certain vulnerable occupancies. The more inspections we can get out, covering all the automotive garages, that's just an example. Big push we've been working on this year, going into all the automotive garages to make sure that they're in compliance. Mill Street, going to all the businesses and residents on Mill. So this is the more inspections we do, the safer our overall municipalities. Public education is a big part of it, to get the wording out, but boots on the ground in the locations, making sure that we're in compliance is where we're gonna make the big difference. There is no percentage of how much time we should spend on inspections compared to public.
And I think that, I think the other part that has me thinking is that we presented to one of the ministers, I don't remember the name, at the last conference about, assistance with funding for the, regional training center. And their recommendation was that we increase our fees. Has there been any, research done on what our fees are? Are they too high? Are they too low? Are we getting the best we can out of the regional training center revenue? And then what are the expenses? I'd just love to see profit and loss to see, you know, is the regional training center ending up in a really positive net income, which is fantastic, but then maybe it can take on more than 50%. That's where I'm coming from on this, because firefighting is such an, it's valuable, I know that, but it's such a big expense overall. And I just want to make sure that we're using every avenue that we can. So to backtrack, my question was, is there a P&L? Do we know how much it is, and can we raise that to 75%? Regardless of how much time is spent on the actual job.
So when it comes to the course cost, we base our course cost on the region. The other training centers, we base our costs, well, pretty much we all set our price list as how much we're going to charge. When you're closer to Toronto, the prices are a little higher than they are here. But our other training centers that are within 2 to 3 hours per bus, our prices are equivalent to these other British training centers. Can we increase the cost? Yes, we can. But as soon as you increase the cost, then you risk losing the students coming because everyone's trying to save money. So every municipality will say, no, go to this place and it's cheaper. So that's why the cost, we try to stay, we don't lose money. One thing with the provincial government's always stated, as a regional training center, they are not designed to make money. They are not designed to make municipality money. It's not a private entity. It's not a private college. It's not, you can make a profit to cover the costs of running the training center and upgrades and the benefit of your own department, but it's not designed to generate revenue for the municipality.
All right, Councillor Holmes, would you like to say something? And but just before that, I'd like to follow up with Councillor Lovell's point. Could you tell us what percentage of the current job, because you've got 9 months of experience now, at the moment, how much of the job is dedicated to training? You've already told us that about 10% is devoted to emergency management and that there are other functions supporting inspection, etc., and education. So can you give us a rough summary of the breakdown of the aspects of the job?
So right now, and that's what it was always based on, is a third. So at the beginning of the year, it's our busy time as the training center, because we need to promote the course, we need to get 10 calendars out, so January, February, we spend more time at the training center. Then our focus switched to emergency management, because that's the focus. So they devoted a month and a half of hours to emergency management, which isn't They didn't just sit there and do emergency management for a month and a half.
No,
So 2 or 3 hours a day. Yeah, so it's hard to say exactly how much time each thing is doing with public education, social media, everything. So it is a difficult say of exactly what percentage is covered in there. That's why we're sticking with 50% coverage, because they're not spending 50% of their time doing regional training center.
okay, thank you very much. And just as a clarification, the description here says the training center is continuing to expand as a regional hub, with gross revenue increasing from $81,266 in 2023 to a projected $200,000 in 2027. And that's a little confused because it also says that the increase of 26 over 25 is $40,000 projected. Okay, are there any other comments or questions, or can we, yes. Well, first,
Yes, I'm surprised that the government come out and say it's not entitled to make money on it. If I was in business and I said that, I wouldn't be in business very long, right? If I couldn't make money in business, I wouldn't be in business. But for the government to come out and say that, I think we have an opportunity, which you've proven very well. We're doing very well, which is a plus. So I would like to see us put more money into we as opposed to they. I'd just like to clarify that I certainly don't agree with what the government has stated there. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
I just have another question. Again, I certainly support the training center, and I've been there watching workshops actually. But I'm wondering about it, and it's very important, like the revenue, and you have explained to me here how much, but like, Torrance, I had to perfect.
Hold unforgettable.
Yeah. Well, seriously, so, I had a little bit of trouble trying to figure all that. But your expenses, do you look at your expenses, like if I suspect that some of your staff were trained, do some of the training, does their salary come out of the cost of the course, or is it so it's all accounted?
It's hard to count.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking, I know we were talking, and Councillor Lowe and I were talking a bit about it, but the accounts that, should that training center have its own account so you can easily account for, where it can. What it's profit and loss or expensive and revenue, I guess. I'm just asking the question, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, the training center does have its own accounts. It has an expense account and a revenue account and a reserve account.
Maybe this is a question under finance. I thought all that was all going together. Is that true? Is that all going into one account? I think so. I think we should rethink that.
They only have one account, don't they? I thought that was what we asked.
Microphone.
Just a second to clarification, we sort of have a voice. Yes, and I think we'll get a clarification on this, and I think it's about time to take vote.
If I'm answering the question correctly, so we do have two accounts, one tracks revenue, one tracks expenses, so we can see those separately. And then at the end of the year, the net result, the net surplus goes into the training center reserve. So all of the expenses are accounted for by the revenues, and then that goes into the reserve, which goes into the reserve.
So then, I guess I'm a bit confused now. So in fact, there is within the fire department that ability to to collect the information on the expenses and the income on the training center.
It would be in our financials.
Yes, so it's easy to see. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is fine with getting out of the line. However, if I could just do a summary before, I think we've gone in a different direction in terms of accounts. It is the accounting and the money comes in and goes out through the municipal accounts, where there's a difference between a completely separate bank account that somebody trots up to the RBC with, and a separate line item within our accounts. So, I mean, it is, and I ask for consideration that during the budget process, the actual accounts for the training center be part of the information that comes to whoever's doing budget. That should not be a problem because we have it. Okay. And finally, everyone's jumping in. But first, and this is the last theory, Mayor Lowry, Councillor Lawrence, and Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to say we're a long piece away from what our motion and our discussion is on the strategic coordinator. So just encourage that we maybe stay focused on what we're here to talk about tonight. Having heard a lot of really good discussion though, I wonder if we can, I don't think we need to do a motion of direction or anything to staff, but I think it might be helpful, just be mindful of where we are in the term. It might be really helpful for the next term of council to hear more of the business plan, like understand what are sort of the directions that you have been understanding to take from the province's expectations in terms of profitability. That does line up with what I've heard as well from sort of my world with Roma and whatnot. And I think it might be helpful for a deep dive to go, for us to go into a deep dive or whomever is at this table. But I don't think that's what we're here to do tonight. But I think at the end of the day, we're all really pretty interested in this. There's lots of really good things here, but it's the strategic coordinator position we're talking about tonight.
Yes, I think this just reflects our interest in something that's successful. Councillor George?
I was going to move the recommendation that we recommend that council approve the funding for the strategic coordinator, but instead of saying the position continues to be 50% funded through regional training center revenue and 50% through tax levy, can we move that piece to budget discussion? And so that we are accepting the position. It provides the stability to the department, to the stability to the decision, to, that has been requested. I think we all see the value of the position now that's being demonstrated. And because our questions are really around that funding part of it, that comes through to the budget decision. But the position itself has been secured. And then we see, is it 50-50 still? Which it might be 60-40. I don't know. Maybe we'll get a little bit more information about what exactly percentage is being. So I would say that committee of the whole recommend council approve funding for the Mississippi Mills Fire Department strategic coordinator as a full-time permanent position on a go-forward basis, and that the position be the funding for the position be considered during budget decisions.
We have that. I need a seconder.
So I need a seconder for that.
I'll second that.
Okay, this is an amended motion.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's just a
It's not
motion.
an amendment.
It's a new one.
It's just a motion.
Well, we haven't finished. My understanding was that we already did have this on the floor as, okay, so we have a new motion. We have a mover and a seconder. And you know what it is?
Mhm.
Can the clerk read that motion? Please.
That the committee of the whole recommend council approve the funding for the Mississippi Mills Fire Department Strategic Coordinator as a full-time permanent position on a go-forward basis, and that the funding of the position to be brought forward during 2027 budget deliberations.
We have a mover and we have a seconder. Could I have a vote, please? All in favor? 4, 5, carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And ladies and gentlemen, that seems to have covered most of the business of this evening. We have quarterly reports from the clerk's department, children's services and corporate services. And as is usual, these reports are for information purposes, and you are asked to follow up with staff if you have any questions that result from them. Just one comment that I had. I was looking at the media analysis and data, and it's pretty impressive. Number 8, information items. Does anyone have an information item they would like to pull for further discussion? Councillor Torrance?
I'd like to, pull the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing about the parkland regulation, for more information from our planning department. And I'd like to pull the Almont Citizen Club partnership proposal, please.
All right. Anything else? Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, I do, Banner County Media BRG. And I think it's coming up on the next agenda after that, is
Yeah.
that correct?
They're coming as a delegation.
Okay, so, okay,
Okay.
no problem. No problem.
Anything else? Councillor Holmes?
No, with me on one set of 10 council.
All right. Well, okay, we will start with, Lanark County Media Release, Business Retention and Expansion Launch. Am I correct? Did someone ask for that? Yes,
Yes, I did, but it's coming out the next agenda, I believe.
okay.
So we.
No, then I just go on what
Thank you.
Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, HOC's Parkland Regulation.
Can I ask us just some staff direction, whether or not our planning department could just write us what the implication of this is for Mississippi Mills? If known.
Is that possible?
Yep.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Next, the Almont Civitan Club Partnership Proposal.
So there is a request in here, and I'm just wondering what we're going to do with this request. Should it be going to Parks and Recreation? Should it be kind of like, what's the path this is going to go on? I would like it to go somewhere for some consideration, and I just want to know how we're going to move this through.
All right, I would like to see this come back to council relatively soon. They are trying to put their ducks in a row this year. And they are very stretched as an organization and need some response. They can't afford 6 months delay. All right,
So
anybody else?
could I guess get staff direction? Could it go to Parks and Recreation and come back in a report or through the budget process?
Through the chair, we've already received a written submission that's a follow-up from the Civitan. which staff have gone through. We do have some additional questions to meet with them to understand. It is, what they're requesting is more than just financial. Okay, so, and it leads to a lot of questions. So we are planning to request a meeting with the lead person that was here as part of the delegation to seek some clarification on that. Their request is to include this in budget 2027. The request wasn't to fund it in advance. So I would assume that, like some of your other decisions here tonight, that you were wanting it to be brought back as part of budget 2027, which is likely sometime after the election. It's not likely it will be.
I think you sort of misunderstood me. If, I realize it would be during budget, but I just think that it does have to come back fairly soon, that's all. So it will.
The intention to the chair is to bring it back during budget 2027.
Yeah.
Which would be after your election. Not soon, it would be December, January timeframe.
Councilor Lowe.
Thank you. Are there pieces in there that aren't financial that should, or, they would like us to bring back earlier? Or can it all be? I just don't, I know I've read something that they are requesting partnership on grant applications, so is that doesn't need to come back to council. Will staff continue to work through that?
Through the chair to Councilor Lowe, some of the questions that we have are defining this idea of a partnership. Okay, not just on the grant, but this, there's a request for a long-term partnership with the municipality on a number of items. And that obviously connotes liability and other things like that. So we need to clarify what they mean by partnership. Thank you.
Councilor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. I'm pleased here there's going to be a meeting on it. My concern would be number 2, in kind. And I can only assume that it'd be quite expensive. That's a commitment from our Public Works Department. If it goes out the door, which brings in private contractors, I don't know. But I do appreciate the fact there's going to be a meeting, and hopefully that's one of the things clarified in detail. Thank you.
Satisfied?
I'm really glad that the staff are meeting with them, and I think it's the appropriate course, especially this close to election time, and that it comes back in the 2027 budget. I think is the perfect solution.
Thank you. If there's nothing more, we'll go to the mayor's report.
Madam Chair, so my apologies, just with timing and whatnot, I could not get your written report, but here are the 3 things. So I certainly owed some details to you. I think in the living container, we've all seen the updates. We're aware of what's going on there. In case anyone hasn't seen the news while we've been on summer recess, the MPCA did accept our proposal, the municipality's proposal. It was as you know, very well supported one by a number of organizations and volunteer groups and individuals. And essentially what that means at this point is that the municipality will become the steward of the collection. There would be an exchange of cost for the collection. The collection would stay as it is, where it is in sale, which has been a very important piece of this whole puzzle for us. Staff will be working with the CA staff over the fall on what the lease looks like for the space, and come the new year, so continue, maybe I should say continue, really start anew once we have some of those details of numbers and details with some of those to have indicated support and really figuring out what this looks like. One of the things that I have said in some of the interviews and whatnot that I've done on this is that, the first chapter was Major Leagues and him putting together the museum for Dr. Mackenzie, and was given the Order of Canada for that. And then the second chapter has been the CA doing an excellent job for 50 years, being the steward of the collection and bringing in the basic collection as well. And here we are with the third chapter, starting to find out what it's like. So just to make sure everybody knew what that is, everything is status quo to the end of this year and next year, and it will be 2028 for operations. And I do want to acknowledge both Councillor Suter and particularly Councillor Holmes for the work that you've done. A lot of time and a lot of conversations and a lot of bringing people around to understand. And when I say people, of course, in the positioning yourself as CA, having them understand really how remarkable these two men are from Ramsey and why it's important this is to hear. So, Councillor Holmes, thank you for the work that you've done on this. And I know it's just begun, but thank you for how you've gotten us to this point.
We're just beginning.
Yeah. So that was the Milliken Tail update. I think I had shared with you that I had been invited to, it says also update, that's not quite accurate. It's like alternative alto is what the meeting was I had attended. And there's a number of us invited around the county and neighboring counties to receive some information about some alternate options. Andrew Antonucci is the name of the presenter that was there, and he has some alternate ideas. I believe it was, this concept was commissioned by the Kingston Tourism Association. Quite interesting, in some ways it looks like it may be less expensive, it looks like it may be an option that uses more public land versus private land. Of course, there'll be private land involved in any of these options. And the thing I found interesting in the presentation is that this alternate, although it stops in Rockville, it would stop in Kingston, it would stop in Belleville, and in Peterborough as intended. With the current plans, it would actually be faster with the route that they're thinking of. So it was really information for us to know. I did a little looking, all of this is out there. So if you've done any looking at some of the alternates, the Andrew Antonucci alternate is there, and I understand it's been presented or has been provided to the minister. So with really information, I have asked if they could share the slides. I haven't received them, but certainly want you, I'm happy to share that with everyone. It was an interesting concept, and just to see that there are people out there thinking about alternates, and really comes down to the minister, of course, and where government chooses to go with this one. And the last that I wanted to share with you is just focusing on the flooding situation in Pakenham. Excuse me. I've had a number of conversations with the warden, the Leonard County warden, and a number of conversations with John Jordan. And I would say communication has been rapid. Everyone's taking my phone calls and calling back very quick, which I appreciate, because this is a situation that has been ongoing for some time. And there does seem to be a willingness to try and find solutions and work together, which I don't want to say it wasn't there before, but I think the urgency in which we're seeing this problem continue on seems to be well understood by all parties, that we really need to find some solutions. In terms of where we're sitting at this point, as I say, there's been very good communication between myself and the warden, and we have agreed that myself, the CEO, and our director of public works, and himself as warden, his CAO, and the county warden as a first step should get together. Let's understand what the problems are. Let's make sure we're all aware of the same challenge and the same information. So I'm looking forward to that. It hasn't been scheduled at this point, but I'm quite confident that meeting will happen. And I believe the intention of the county is to have a report. I don't know how wide it would be, how deep it would be, any of those kinds of things at this point, but there would be a report at a public works meeting. I have no insight into what would be considered there, but I imagine it will not be the solution. It will probably be bringing up the county staff to speed to understand this issue and what the steps might be and trying to find a solution. So I don't have really any answers at this point, but I do have some confidence in the work that he's seeing this as an important issue as much as we are. And as I say, certainly our MVP has taken a few of my calls quite quickly and is working with them on our behalf as well. So. Do you want to report? Thank you.
Well, thank you. And, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've got a county report here, so it's, a couple of months ago, I reported on, the rescue service trucks that we had, and I was disappointed with the county because they got an independent contractor to look at the placement of 3 trucks that were already placed in, one's in Perth, one's in Almont, and one's in Montague. They've decided the status quo as predicted. So I predicted that. That was my prediction, status quo, and that's what they came up with. So I wonder how much the independent contractor that did the survey cost. But anyways, and we established the medical tiered response program for Lander County for, but you have to sign up. The county has to, the townships have to sign up if they want to be included in it, and it's for fire trucks if they're on call, or if they should be called or not called. So that's another thing that I think we should look into maybe and get on board with the county. The housing and homeless report we received, and we got the money from the province, and it's the same as last year. Emergency shelter, a couple of $100,000. Supportive housing, 830,000. The bridge house, 802,000. It all works out, and 5% for administration. So it's exactly the same funding as last year. And we're doing a business expansion and retention thing at the county. So maybe they can get together and do it as one. Or I wonder with the county, I wonder how much they'll come to this end of the county to do the report. I'm not sure. Okay.
Figure at the next meeting.
Yeah.
That'll be next month.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And that's my report.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Holmes, Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority report.
Well, I think we reported on it informally in June, and there was a meeting in July. I can't even remember now what we talked about, but we still don't have the written report, so I can't give us anything too much there, and there was no meeting in August, so.
Well, if I remember correctly, we did get some correspondence about the proposed makeup of the St. Lawrence River Conservation Authority, which is what the MBCA will become part of. And they request responses from municipalities by the 14th of September. And at this point, Lander County has 1 vote, as well as North Frontenac and Lennox and Addington, which are counties that actually have the major source of the Mississippi. They don't have much population, but the lakes that feed the whole system are up in their area, and they teach how to boat too. Okay, Lander County Police Services Board.
Yes, thank you. Well, the quarterly report was sent to Burke, and everyone has it. It's in your package as well. The meeting scheduled for this month is canceled because of the emo. That will be picked up the following months. Thank you.
And
Just,
yes,
for Councillor, Ferguson, there was lots of good information in that report. You looked it over pretty good and it was, it's a pretty good report. So. Good.
Thank you. I think, yes, I believe it's quite informative. If anybody wants to take the time to read them, covers category of the policing total. I know there's speeding issues, but that's covered there as well. So there's an increase in patrols and.
That's everywhere.
Yes. Thank you.
Library Board, is there any news?
We didn't meet in line, we meet, next week.
Thank you. And finally, the meeting calendar. You have it. And we seven shall meet again on the 25th of August. And I think that is that. Could I entertain a motion for adjournment?
And just adjourn.
Councilor Lawrence. Councilor Ferguson, all in favor? Good night. I'm not really.
We're gonna make it harder next time.
Good job.
That was great. Working out.